Okay, I'd like to get started. First of all, I want to welcome, we have some guests here today. And I'll start over here on my right is Chelsea LaRue. Chelsea is, tell us your title, please.
I'm the School Engagement Clinician, Central Office at the Colchester School District.
Okay, so Chelsea's visiting us from Colchester Milton. And then we also have, let's see, going around, we have David Tomasi. And David is candidate for the school board. And his wife,
Olivia.
Livia, that's right, Livia, lovely name. Okay, and over here we have Stephanie. Stephanie Phelps is visiting today, but she brought an application, so we're looking forward to having her join our club. And Nic Longo, who's also running for the school board, he's one of our speakers today, and Julie Holberg.
Yes.
And Julie also came with an application today. So we met Stephanie and Julie at our Reed Night Rotary event, and we're thrilled to have you. Thank you very much. Yes, and we're welcoming back some travelers. Michael and David have been in Cuba for the last couple of weeks. So we should hear a little bit about their travels, I think, later. So anyway, yes, I think we decided that we're going to have our speakers go first.
Did you want to do the presentation first?
Pardon me?
Did you want to do the presentation?
Chelsea can stay. Okay, so we'll do that afterwards.
Okay, so let's see if I can manage not to spill anything else. We're here to help you if you do. Yeah, but that's really embarrassing. We've all done it. So today we are privileged to have the two candidates running against each other, who seem to be very friendly. Nic Longo has visited us several times. He has been on the school board for 3 terms. 2.
Hope to be 3.
David's hoping it's not 3. And he is also the head of the Burlington Airport, and we had him speak. And then David has 2 children in the school district. He comes from a family of immigrants and refugees. He is a neuropsychologist, which I think probably has a lot of use in schools these days. And he is, are you the owner of Nortad?
Yeah.
Of Nortad Psychotherapy, and he teaches at CCB and Vermont State Colleges. And I'm gonna let them talk about whatever they would like to talk about regarding being a school board member. Didn't have you draw straws. Who would like to go first?
Sure, I'll jump in.
Okay.
I'm sure.
Yeah. Can I go up to the front here so I'm not behind anybody? Well, thank you all very much again. Again, my name is Nic Longo, and Chris, thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you to the club too. David, thank you very much for being here too. David and I have had some conversations too, and I think there's a lot of similarities, which is really wonderful. So again, my name is Nic Longo. I'll give you a little bit about my background and why I'm running for re-election to the Colchester School Board. My wife and I moved here about 12 years ago in Colchester. I have 3 kids in the district, different ages, so they're literally in 3 different schools in the district right now. And I really enjoy not just our Colchester community, but also in my professional career, what I do every single day for the greater community and the state of Vermont.
Yeah, could you stand back a little bit so that
It's filming just your
see
belly.
your face?
Thank you. It's just Al, though. I know Al. Unless that's on LCA TV too. Perfect. I'll come right back here. Oh, I love it. There you go. That's my good side too. So yeah, and I really enjoy volunteering in this particular town. I am a Little League board member. I've been on the board of Little League in Colchester for about 9 years. I coach. I manage the T-ball league in Colchester as well. which this year I'm hoping to hit 90 kids in our division, which is historically the highest we've had. But it's more about keeping the kids active and in the program long term. And I've been doing that for about 9 years. I've also sat prior to the school board on the planning commission for the town of Colchester. I did that for about 5 years prior to school. The school board helped write a lot of the land development regulations that we see today in Colchester, as well as the 2019 Colchester Town Plan, and the very fancy title of the Mallett's Bay Stormwater Initiative Report, which is the sewer project. And have been very integrated into those conversations with the town and where we are today. In my professional career, I am the director of the Patrick Leahy Burlington International Airport, so I get to manage quite a few different items, and honestly, we get to work with an incredible team at the airport to manage what we have right now is about $180 million capital program in the next couple of years. We're under construction right now with $60 million of terminal expansion. The reason I mention that is all of that really helps me perform really well at the school district and specifically in the board. I'm constantly talking about capital budgets, talking about our annual budgets that we cycle through, not just at the airport, but also within the district. And those really help me make sure I'm advocating and representing all of our Colchester residents in my hometown. Like I said, I've been on the board, the school board, for the last 5 years, and I'm not quite done yet. I want to make sure that the momentum that we have on the district and with the board and the skills that I bring to the board continue for the next 3 years. This is a 3-year term. And each one of those professional elements really relate very closely to the conversations and the challenges that I bring to the Colchester School Board. We are a growing community in Colchester. In fact, we're one of the only districts in the state of Vermont that has a growing student population. Right now it's about 2,200 students, and our budget is really conservative when you look at a per student cost to the district. In fact, we're lower than the state of Vermont average budget, which is really good. It's a fine balance to making sure we have a fiscally responsible budget, which I constantly challenge for the last 5 years to make sure that the tax implications, because that's the bottom line when we talk about that, are also balanced with the quality education that our amazing staff and leadership within the district provide to the students. The governor said something in his inaugural address recently, which really stuck in my mind, and it's going to relay into what I'm going to talk about next with education tax reform. He said that no matter what happens and whatever occurs with the planning of education in the state of Vermont, the primary focus has to be on students. If we're not providing a quality education to the students, while also concurrently, it can happen together, looking at a conservative and financially feasible, sustainable budget, that's got to be our primary goal for student education. In Colchester, that's happening, and it's happening at the back end of COVID, where it was extremely challenging, I think district-wide and beyond, of course, not just in education, of course. But our testing scores, everything that we relate from a data standpoint within Colchester is increasing because of the opportunities that we provide to students and to teachers and support staff and paraeducators and custodial staff. The last 5 years I've been on the negotiation teams for the contracts, not just some of the contracts, every single contract that we have within our Colchester unions, and we have multiple unions within the district. In fact, right now we're negotiating a teacher contract for the next, what I hope will be the next few years of that contract negotiation. And each one of those elements, no different than what I'm talking about, balancing quality education with the financial budget, same with negotiations with teachers. We need to provide a fair contract to our teachers so that they can continue inspiring and teaching our kids at a level that is consistent with retaining teachers and, to be honest, attracting teachers to our district. We're doing really, really well right now, which has given us the opportunity and the work that I've put into the board to bring a budget this year that, once again, is really conservative. Today, we're looking at about a 2.9% budget. No, that was perfect timing. We're looking at about a 2.9% tax increase for this year's school budget. To get there, because of the highly dynamic nature of the state of Vermont right now, with changes in tax reform, not just this year and what was proposed this year, but also last year, we had to make some cuts. We cut positions, we cut minimal programs, but essentially we leveled our scope of work and our position to make sure that what we offer to the students, the opportunities for every student, is still available out there while keeping our 2.9%. That also includes our first bond payment. We actually were not going to include it in this year's budget, but because we made pretty major changes to this year, as well as looked at what the state was doing, we were able to put our first bond payment into this current fiscal year budget, which is about $1 million for the first year. That bond payment, as maybe many of you know, is associated with a $115 million bond that was passed. And I worked hard with the district and I can't say enough about the incredible superintendent of Colchester, Amy Minor. They worked hard to make sure that we fixed what was necessary. We right-sized what was necessary for our district. We have schools that were built in the mid-1950s, the middle school in the 1960s, that need tremendous help. I was talking with somebody earlier about, I think it was Essex School District that had leaks in the roof. We've had that in our district too, and unfortunately the students and some of the staff have aptly named that the library waterfall or the Porter's Point waterfall or things like that. We gotta get rid of that, and we, not only the utilities and the facilities that we have, more so where we teach our students. We don't have enough classrooms because of the growth that we're seeing in Colchester, and that's why this bond is so critical to make sure that we right-size our district, right-size the schools, touch every single one of the 5 schools that are currently in our operation, so that we can make sure students aren't being taught in hallways or vestibules or other locations that really are not conducive to teaching. So my goal is, of course, I'm running for re-election to the Colchester School Board. I've put a lot of time, a lot of energy over the last 5 years, and I'm not done yet. I really appreciate the conversations that I've had with David, and the conversations that have been sparked because of this election. And I think that's a really great motivational piece for me to make sure that we do more, we do better, we look at our budget, we make sure we're providing something to you, the taxpayers, that is consistent with quality education standards. And that's why I'm running for re-election to this Colchester School Board, and I'm happy to take any questions.
How about we let David go and
Perfect.
we'll take.
Yeah, perfect. So thank you all very much.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. I'm the other guy. So let me start by saying that I'm very happy that I met Nick. In a perfect case scenario, I will not run against anyone. In fact, we were joking the other day, I think it was last week during one of the Scouts event, that especially in this time of political problems and harsh climate, it's really nice to have a debate in which you agree with everything your opponent is saying. I think it just feels good, and I'm really, really happy, with Nick and everything that's been done. So, in a personal sense, whomever you pick, you will make me happy. I just want to mention that, and I also mention this, that my main interest in running for the school board is to propose some ideas. Whether such ideas will be brought forth by myself or by Nick, I'll be totally fine. I just want to bring some ideas to the conversations. Now that I think I gave you about 60 seconds to get adjusted to my accent, we can go to the meat of what I'm trying to propose. So First of all, let me just say that I start from a position of advantage, as in, if I had any issues or criticism toward what the school board is doing, it's much easier for me to point out all the bad stuff because I have been there to work with them for all these years. So yes, I do have some criticism, but I just want to make sure that the conversation is fair and everything I'm about to say is viewed as a suggestion rather than, criticism for criticism's sake. And I would like to focus first on what brings me here. I promise I'm not gonna bore you with my background, you can find it online in the net. And then I will try to tackle 3 main points. So my area of expertise is neuroscience and psychology and education, and to some other extent medicine. And I'm a father of 2, and Nick wins because he's a father of 3, so I have to give that points to him, yes. You moved here 12 years ago, right, I think? Yes, I moved here 13 years ago, so yeah. We are very similar, including our Italian last name, so that works well. So I hope that I'll be able to bring my professional background in the mix and also my personal background. Yes, I am an immigrant, and my wonderful wife is also an immigrant and a refugee, of her family, a refugee from Bosnia. And I just hope that this will bring some level of inclusion and kindness and different perspective to the mix. Now, the main point I want to discuss is, of course, money and budget. I have the chance to speak with many families in the Colchester areas that are somewhat afraid and tense about the spending. But at the same time, we have to spend to have good qualities. There's no way around that. And if we have to make some cuts, we have to cut something. I do feel that the number itself, close to 65 million, it's a bit high. Again, I don't want to say anybody how to do their job. But what I'm mostly concerned is some areas in which it was spent. Now, I think that there are certain situations where it doesn't matter how much you cut, you will not really make a dent in the spending, and especially when it comes to infrastructure, you cannot create anything from scratch for free. Just a hard fact of the situation. So my criticism, it's really not a criticism of the spending per se, but I really like to say that if I were to be elected, I wouldn't run. First of all, it's not to a community service, but I would not view the school system as a business per se. I am a business owner, but I would view it more as what the system is, a school. I would like to focus on the content. Now, this brings me to think about the unfairness toward families that to have a great education have to send their kids to private schools. That's just not fair. Now, yes, Colchester is doing much better. In fact, much better both at a state level as well as a national level in those fields that are relevant to our education, including mathematics, including science and English, and unified arts as well. But at risk of sounding very cynical, the bar is so low at a national level that it doesn't take much to do a good job. And I know that I might be biased, because I come here from a different country and tell you what to do. But at the same time, I was privileged enough to get my doctorates, and have all my school. And at the same time, I have to admit that my grandmother, with no formal education, brought up in a farm, is most likely more qualified in both math and English than a lot of recent graduates, and just not fair. Now, who we should blame here? I don't think we should blame the school board, we shouldn't blame the teachers. In fact, I am very happy with the teachers in the Colchester school system, and my kids go to both UMS and MBS, but I think it's a systemic problem. It is just not fair that there should be such a big separation in the system per se. So this is one of the areas of my criticism content, which again, it's not criticism toward the board, of course, but more of a systemic problem. As far as the spending, there are some things that I am somewhat concerned. Now, there was a recent article that was published, and the journalist Jean did a wonderful job, and yet the article seemed to have been edited by artificial intelligence. It's another part of my criticism. There are things that you just need a human brain, I'm biased toward a brain for this reason, and a human heart to better understand. So one of the things that I said, for instance, I did not necessarily say that I'm opposed to the proposal by our governor, but that I'm very concerned about it, especially because we have a lot of students in Colchester, and having only 5 districts statewide will be a problem in that area. Now, the other issue is what we're going to do with the content of our education. And once someone like Nick and myself is up here speaking, there's always some tension. You want to, you don't necessarily want to impress the people you're speaking to, but at least you don't want to embarrass yourself in saying certain things. But this is something that I learned, I guess, in my private life and in my career as a neuropsychologist, that I'm much rather being embarrassed for a brief period of time for a presentation rather than being wrong for many years to come. So what I'm about to say might sound controversial simply because of the current state of affairs in our society. And I feel the need to speak up because I think that from a perspective of neuropsychology and medicine, which is my field, the field I'm teaching in and doing research in, and I work as a secretary for the Vermont Academy of Arts and Science, the way sex and gender has been taught in the school system could be better, could be much better, and it's an area of, in my view, quite problematic approach in terms of bridging the gap between solid philosophy, kindness, and biology. The second area that I think I am more in tune to discuss is the area of diversity and inclusion. And in a similar manner, from a strictly psychological standpoint, I feel that we could also improve the way those topics are taught to our children. Now, I heard many conversations in the community where things are very heightened in the way they present themselves, and the current election result possibly corroborates that view. Now, I'm not a member of any party, so my interest is simply the interest of a father, but I do sense that at the level of the Colchester community especially, there are a few things that either families do not understand necessarily, they might be suspicious, or they might be afraid of, and I think we should be more transparent in the way we communicate those things to our families, which brings me to my third point. The reason why I'm totally fine if Nick gets elected, or if I'm gonna get elected, is precisely because of that. Because as long as we can have an open conversation about the content, whereby families don't need to struggle to understand what is going on behind closed doors, which is, by the way, not what the school board is doing for this reason. LCATV is there all the time, and I've had a chance to go there too. But just because something is open, it might not be easy to understand. In my field, especially when I teach my students, it's one thing to know everything about neurochemistry. A completely different thing is to disclose how neurochemistry actually applies in everyday life. So some family might be afraid of what they would classify as indoctrination versus education. I think we just need to bring down the tension a little bit and bridge the gap. I would say not even bridge the gap between left and right, because I'm not sure if you noticed, but there's more of a political spectrum. There's more spectrum in everything than just left and right. But part of that is allowing our children to, first of all, relate to one another on the same premises that, as I quoted earlier, my grandmother will be able to relate to one another. So not presupposing that something is intrinsically evil without proof. And by that I simply mean the way we treat our children. And of course, in this area, I might be slightly protective of my own children because, yeah, there is bullying in school, there are microaggression in school, and one way to overcome that, I would feel, it's an open and kind conversation about the things that are more or less productive and the things that are less conducive to a more inclusive environment. So to summarize what I would like to offer, one, a review of the spending and which areas are dedicated to that. And of course, because I'm a neuropsychologist, one of the things that I am somewhat curious about is this increase in the percentage of spending for social worker as opposed to 68%, 65.8%, as opposed to direct education. Now, of course, there is always a need for social work, there's always a need for special education, there's always a need for psychologists, and even more so nowadays. But I'm somewhat concerned that some of those skills should be possessed by teachers as well, at least that was the case back in my days. So that's one of the areas. The second area, as I said, working on the content to make sure the content is more science-based, but also more kindness-based. And the third element is being able to allow for everybody's voice to have a place, listen to the family's concerns, and sometimes that also means listens to mommy and daddy first. In conclusion, it's great that we focus on our children. It's great our children bring their perspective to the mix. But I would think that it would be a little unfair to expect children, especially at that developmental stage, to know what's best for them. That's why you need parents. That's why when it comes to science, biology, philosophy, mathematics, you don't necessarily ask a child what's best for them. You need to ask the expert. This is not to exclude children, but to make sure that children deserve what their school was always there for. Now think about the very term inclusive school. I think we should all agree that we should be inclusive, that we should be tolerant, that we should be kind and loving. And even if someone has a hurt heart, and this will make this person less prone to understand the other perspective, from a neurochemical perspective, love and kindness always win. So we assume that is the case. It is the case, scientifically and philosophically. But at the same time, we also want to make our schools more exclusive, as in higher academically. After all, if you want to put something in your resume, would you put down that you graduated from an exclusive school? I think that should be a good point for education in general. So let's try to bring everything together. Let's try not to shy away from a difficult conversation, and let's do that with love, kindness, and respect. Thank you.
So now people can ask questions, but for each question, let's have an answer from each of our guests. Who would like to begin?
Nick, were you appointed to your seat, or did you have a 2-year term the first time?
Yes, so this would be my third term running for an election. So the first 2 terms, I was unopposed on ballot for those first 5 years.
So were you in 2-year terms previously?
1 2-year, 1 3.
But both were for election?
That's right. This is not appointed. The only appointed position that I was in was the Colchester Planning Commission that was appointed by the select board.
Michael and I were there too, but when they called it zoning. They changed zoning to planning and then redid zoning.
And then land development regulations.
He
So,
said, you could reapply for your position if you want, and we said, nah. We served long enough.
It's complex on that too.
So I don't think that question
No.
quite applies to David. So do we have other questions?
The kid's question, but why?
Okay, I'll ask a question. David alluded to it, but I would like to hear both candidates' opinion on it. 5 school districts in the state of Vermont. Your positions.
Yeah, sure, yeah. Actually, David said something that I do agree with. I don't know how I feel yet about the governor's plan, all right? It's highly complex. This is a incredibly complex issue, not just in towns itself from a funding perspective. The plan itself is massive. I think larger districts in rural areas makes a lot of sense. To me, Colchester is in Chittenden County, which is the largest populated area of the state, and it would be incredibly challenging to have a 35,000 student district in just this town, especially made of various other large districts. So I'm not quite there yet in generally understanding what that means for the entire state, especially in this district. But I also want to be very careful because creating a single district just in Chittenden County is also going to decrease the representation for Colchester. And what I mean by that is the new board that would be appointed by the 35,000 student membership would be highly controversial across districts from St. Albans to, south of Burlington that have generally different issues. I promise you that I'm gonna wanna be on that board, but I also know that other people from St. Albans and Burlington will want to, and they're gonna wanna represent their towns as much as I wanna represent my town. And when you have such a large district, I have concerns about that. Because I wanna make sure that what we do, specifically from a financial component, is relative to the residents and the taxpayers of Colchester. And I think we do a really, really good job right now in Colchester to maintain those costs. In fact, the last 10 years, our budget averaged 2.6% increase. And I think we do a really good job by also decreasing our budget every now and again. Two of those years were decreased. We can do that in Colchester, not as a larger district. Generally though, highly complex. I need to know more about the plan and the bill itself, which is not out there right now.
David?
Thank you, yeah, sure.
Maybe I'll just stand up.
I'm sure, yes. Well, I agree. Period. No, I want to add something, but yes, I fully agree. And in fact, that is one of the main issues I would say in this public climate. One should say things are too complex for me to make a stand in one direction or the other, and that doesn't mean that this person is dodging the question. It's a scientific and intellectual honesty to himself. As far as my concerns are exactly the same as Nick's concern, I would say. Colchester is a special place, both from my perspective of sheer numbers, as well as geopolitical location. And for us to be united with other districts currently, there's just a lot of kids. The expected number will be around 35, short of 35,000, something like that. And that's really a long number. The things I'm not necessarily opposed on a principle is unifying things, because very often these two things are merged together. The board and agency of education take over on one side, and the district number reduction on the other side. For instance, I had a lot of experiences in Europe where everything at the level of European education is completely centralized. And if the criticism is, well, the government should keep its proper place and not tell us what to do. Well, I see that unifying things very often make things easier. And for instance, in my field, I'm very happy that they're in the field of neuropsychology and medicine. When you need to take a board examination, the board examination itself is the same across the nation, because otherwise you don't know which doctor to trust the most. So it makes sense to have a centralized way to determine who's qualified and who's not qualified. But at the same time, if the problem is understanding the need of each community, of course, the bigger the community, the more problems we're going to have. So yes, it's not a straightforward answer, but that's intellectually honest.
Michael?
I don't quite know how to address the question. This plan that, the governor has in mind was originally formulated by somebody that was in this club, was Armando Villaseca, when he was the Secretary of Education. And then they threw him out because it was too radical or something. And then, 4 years later, somebody else's plan, and now we're hammering the plan again. I don't think anybody understands what the plan is, including the legislators. And, but something has to be done. I mean, last year we had a 15% increase in our local taxes. So I realize that doesn't formulate into 2.6.
It does.
It does?
It does.
But that's a big chunk for a lot of people. Not necessarily the people in this room, but a lot of people. And some way, we've got to cut the expense. So ideas from either one of you on how to do that, to give back to the governor.
Sure, yes.
Not to tell the governor what he's doing, but he needs help.
He does need help, and I think there's, yeah, sorry, I just.
Oh, no,
jumped
sure,
in,
no,
but-
please, no, go ahead, yes. Makes my job easier.
He needs help, and the help is there, right? There's a lot of communication, both from the teachers' union as well as many other organizations to say, very, very similar to what you said, something does need to be done. We need to look at this holistically, specifically financially, to see if there's some collaboration, as David even said. What that is, I don't know. The complexity of what the proposal is versus what individual towns are doing right now. For example, that 15% increase, that wasn't that was a state decision, not a local decision.
Yeah.
And those make it incredibly challenging for local boards to make our budgetary decisions, even on the basis of our total budget, annual budget, $65 million. So when we don't know what's happening at a local level, why is that gonna change with a larger district, besides the sharing of some of our resources? But last year was one of the most challenging budget years that I've ever gone through on the 5 years that I've been on the board, where we originally thought we were gonna hit about a 3% increase, and then all of a sudden Act 127 hit, and then it jumped to 15%, and then it went back down again. So the legislative sessions, and even on a relatively normal year like this year, is very difficult for us local boards to make decisions to bring back to you as citizens to say, we're expecting or estimating that the tax implication this year is around 2.9%. That's not for all Colchester residents either. That's for about 40% of the Colchester taxpayers. 60% of the Colchester taxpayers will see a decrease in this year's budget, and that's associated with income-based property taxes versus assessed value on the property.
Except reassessing the property value.
That is also happening right now. So that's another uncontrollable thing of the school board, where the town is now going through their reassessment. That common level of appraisal right now is in the 50 percentile. That's really low. And so that dynamic between the school and the town budgets and the tax implications are gonna shift, right? It's gonna be the same dollar at the end of the day, right? But your assessed value is gonna go up. The school budget percentage is gonna go down. Hypothetically.
Thank you, yes. Yes, I would agree, I would possibly add some broader perspective, as in, I like always to, this part is where I would look at the school board as a business, only this part, where you compare the money used elsewhere. And one area, for instance, that I feel it's not entirely justified is the consistency in increase. Yes, it is true that, you know, the average is still 2.6, 2.58, and it's still within normal level, statistically speaking, normal distribution. But that's every time we approve a new budget. So there's a constant increase. And that curve over time, I don't think is justified whatsoever. Now, at risk of sounding old school, in elementary, middle, and even high school, a child should be able to learn with just pen and paper. And I mean that. I mean that fully. So I completely understand the spending when it comes to infrastructure. Of course, you know, especially in Vermont, you don't want to have the risk of having pipes bursting or roofs collapsing. But there's a lot of spending that I don't think is justified. Now, one could make still that mathematical case that, yeah, but if you just get rid of, you know, technology, you're not really gonna save much money. But I think that at the level of education itself, we need to really evaluate how much every single spending is justified. I want to give an example because I mentioned a mathematical comparison. And the example, again, is the one that I do with things I'm familiar with, both professionally and personally, the European Union. So the average salary for a school teacher is pretty much the same as a doctor, okay? We're talking about, depending on which country of the European Union, 45,000 euros a year to a max of 70,000 euros a year. That's it across the spectrum. Now, of course, this is something that's only made possible by the fact the European Union guarantees free education and free healthcare. So whatever you put in your pocket stays in your pocket. Okay? You just have those taxes, which are higher than the United States for sure, but you have no surprises. So if I had a magic wand, I would certainly apply that model here, but that will mean a significant decrease in pay for everyone, myself included as a doctor, right? And so one has to look at oneself in the mirror and say, well, whatever extra penny I should make more than the average, I better demonstrate that what I have to offer is higher in quality. Now, at risk of shooting myself in the foot, because I am in public education, I'm a faculty in a community college, and I also used to teach for UVM for many years. That spending too is absolutely unjustified. The fact that students will have to graduate with $200,000 in loans, absolutely unjustified. And by unjustified, I mean mathematically so. So yes, it's a struggle to find where to put the money, but until we have a solution, we simply cannot increase taxes. It's just not feasible, it's unethical, and scientifically nonsense.
Can I add something?
Sure.
Is that appropriate? If you're okay
Yeah,
with
please
it?
go ahead, yes.
Yeah, I think we agree on many things. I think I'm
Yes.
gonna respectfully disagree
Sure.
on this one. 70.
You're so good so far.
75% of our budget is salaries and benefits. That's that $65 million cost. So 75% of that. What you're talking about are highly qualified educators that have degrees, master's degrees, that do have that debt associated with that level of education to teach our students. When we look at our contracts with our teachers, and that's not just our teachers, but every single one of our contracts, teachers and support staff, which consists of paraeducators and many other sectors of the school division, we do have to look at a nominal increase to those salaries, right? A $45,000 to $75,000 a year position is not a livable wage necessarily, especially when you have that higher education in the state of Vermont. So we really do have to look at a fair result to teachers, and as I said before, so that we retain teachers and make sure that we have that talent to educate our students. 75% is a big number of $65 million. And we do a really good job to make sure, inclusive of inflation, that we're still around 3% increase for teachers on their salaries, sometimes more, especially through the pandemic. So it's a tough scenario to say, in my opinion, that we have to decrease budget, because to decrease budget means to de-scope work and to de-scope the services that we provide to our students, and that's something I don't support.
So I'm gonna ask a follow-up question. If you had to eliminate one or two programs within the school district, and I'm thinking right now about my experience with juveniles all the time, and the behavioral issues that are going on, the mental health issues that are going on, the drug abuse that's going on, is that school's job?
You wanna go first?
Sure, yes. As a psychologist, I'm supposed to listen, right? So I'll go first. All right. Okay, so let me answer this question right away. In a healthy society, you will not need me. Let's put it this way, as a psychologist. And I say that with the most, hopefully, the most branches of medicine, right? If you're healthy, you don't need any doctor, period. So part of it, we have to look at ourselves in the mirror and understand that the vast majority of education should happen within the household, from the family. Period, okay? Now, of course, not everybody has a chance to have as we would say in my field, a well-balanced, established family, an adjusted family, and therefore there is need for psychologists, social worker, therapists, special educator, para-educator, of course. But we should always understand that it is a response to the problem, okay? From a preventive perspective, we should educate families again. Now, to answer your question, should the school do that? Well, the school, just as the state, should be an extension of the family. If those values are still in place, from an ethical and scientific standpoint, that should continue. Now, to address the problem of what to do specifically, well, in that sense, the scientific knowledge with psychology did not completely change everything in the last 100 years. We do know much more about neuroscience for obvious reason, but those values that past generations still had to propose to the children are still valid. And so in order for our children to be more adjusted, the answer, as cheesy as it may sound, it's love, starting from the family. So the school should just be, a continuation of that love that they find in their family. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think one of the important aspects of being on the board is policy work. In fact, just this week, we were talking about drug and alcohol use or abuse within the schools. I completely agree. I think the extension of the school to provide support where it needs to is really critical in my mind, to make sure that the opportunity for every student is there for them. Not just in education, but support services with substance abuse or alcohol abuse. I think it's a very tricky, more complex than school budgets, epidemic that we have to address, and unfortunately it is hitting younger kids. So I think that extension of the school and the support from the school to allow kids the resources that they need, and that's exactly what our policy kind of addresses, is really, really critical. Not just for the student, but sometimes for the family as well. Because a lot of that comes from the family too. You learn from your family, unfortunately, the good and the bad. I don't, when you talk about a financial component associated with that scope of work, or those types of issues, I don't think there's a massive component to that, but I think the resources need to be available for those students.
May I add something? Would it be okay? Thank you. So this is a little vignette, a little story that I use often in my students when I teach psychology and neuroscience. And it's the story of the surgeon who had an injury. So imagine the situation. There's a person who had a car accident. The person goes to the hospital and needs to undergo surgery, right? Now, the likelihood that this person will find a physician that perfectly matches this person's background is very, very low. So what the person usually should do is trust the person's expertise, background, and knowledge, right? So by the same token, it could be possible there are situations where you will develop more empathy if you have exactly the same background as a person. Oh yes, I understand what happened to you. I had a ski accident, I broke my ligament, and therefore I can empathize with you. And that might also add, some benefits in terms of bedside manner. But the point I'm trying to make is that you don't necessarily have to have the same exact experience, identity, or background to be helpful. And so when we're thinking about the drug epidemic, which is a reality, especially in Burlington, okay, then people sometimes blame this on tough love. But true love means to tell the truth. And that's how you're going to be inclusive, by virtue of discussing what works, what does not work, by not blaming the victim if the person does not have a balanced, well-structured family, but also not shying away from problems. Is that financially, correlated? Maybe yes, maybe no. But one thing I can say is this: you will not have to pick between money, science, and your heart. The answer will be found in between these things. So if you do the right thing from a moral and ethical standpoint, science will back you up, and you don't need a lot of money to do that. You just need a good heart.
Any more questions? I think so. Thank you both very much.
Thank
Good
you.
luck to
Thank you.
both of you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Awesome. Good job.